Okay, welcome. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lake Lure Marine Commission this Tuesday, March 12, 2019 at 4 p.m. I would ask all that are here to please rise, join me in the invocation, and the gentleman remove your wraps, and let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings that you've bestowed on our community and this governing body. We ask as we go forward with this Marine Commission meeting that you give us your divine guidance. You help us to make good decisions that are in the best interest of our town and its citizens. In your name we humbly ask these things. We pray to you. Amen. All right, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. We'll begin. First item on our agenda would be the approval of the agenda, and I would ask my fellow commissioners here if there are any changes, recommended changes, additions, deletions. I know of, I believe, one item here that we should add.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we add a 7G under new business, which is the subject of dredging in Firefly Cove. We have, I believe, everybody has the package of information.
All right, we'll add a number 7 under new D under new business. Anything else? If nothing else, I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion.
So moved by Commissioner Cameron. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kilby. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, well, our next item on the agenda, we have a couple, we have the public forum, and we have a sign-up sheet over there. We have a limited number of folks from the public. If anybody has signed up or would like to speak, why don't you just come on up? There being none, we'll go ahead and move on through the agenda to the public hearing. We have a resolution 1903-12 amending the lake use regulations, and I guess, Dean, this is something you can bring to the attention. We'll give the public a chance to comment, and then we'll close the hearing.
Okay, it came before this board before about a specialized barge being allowed on the lake to do construction. I did check with local contractors to make sure that we did not have this type of technology on the lake, and this board here approved that barge to be on the lake for a period of time. I believe it was 90 days. And during that discussion, we talked about putting it in the lake use regulations so it would be an easier process in the future when it's specialized equipment need to be on the lake, that it could be approved through town staff to have that on the lake for a period of time that's needed for the job. And so basically what I've done is just written in another paragraph into the lake use regulations. This was taken before the LAB. It was voted on 4-2 in favor to recommend this to the Marine Commission for approval.
Okay, so anybody from the general public that wants to speak on that? I see none. Therefore, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion. We close the public hearing.
Okay, you have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Weber. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that takes us to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, which is the adoption of the December 11th regular meeting minutes several months ago. Anybody can remember, but there are some minutes there. We've had a chance to go through them. Does anybody have any changes? If not, it's on the consent agenda, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Cameron. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, brings us to the new business items, of which we now have 4. first item on that new business agenda is a proposed resolution. It's number 190312. We just held a public hearing on that. I guess I would entertain a motion to adopt that resolution.
I'll make the motion, we adopt the resolution number 1903-12 of the Town of Lake Lure Marine Commission amending the lake use regulation.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but
For the purpose of discussion?
yeah.
Okay.
I think that where we have approval of, the last sentence, approval of commercial temporary permit will be at the discretion of the Parks, Recreation, and Lake Director. We changed that title, and I don't anticipate it being changed again, but we didn't anticipate it was going to be changed this last time. So I'm wondering if we should have, Dean, what do you think about if we put after that, or town manager? Is that okay with everybody?
Do you like, you good with that? Yep.
Yeah, and that would cover if you were on vacation or that way.
Yeah, it provides an alternate, but another thing is, if you recall, after we approved the other one, there was some dissent in the community regarding that decision, and do we want to put Dean in that position to be the subject of that controversy?
Comes with the position.
I don't think that. Which,
Do you have an issue with that, Dean? Do you have any issue with that?
I know, as long as it's in the lake use regulations,
Yeah.
it's basically what council's approved. I feel like it's you guys back in.
that was the biggest thing I heard. If I don't know if we were hearing from the same folks or not, but was that that's not in the regulations, and why'd y'all stick your neck out for this guy and not? So this kind of plugs that hole.
And you would have hoped that if someone was opposed, they'd be here today to speak at public hearing.
Right.
Okay, well, we have a little discussion. Any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that brings us to item B on our agenda, and this is a request from Dan Brenneman to appeal a decision of the Lake Advisory Board. And so, once again, Dean, could you give us a little background? It's in the packet, and explain where we are on this. And I see we have Mr. Brenneman here, along with the chairman of the Lake Advisory Board. And we have any questions as regards their recommendation? We have that person here.
Okay. Each year, when we do the commercial boat model, we have people come in sometimes that don't get their permits turned in time. And in the past, we have allowed hours to be taken out of a different category and added into the livery above 10 horsepower category to allow more boats on the lake. This year, we brought up with the LAB that we kind of needed to study these hours to see what we were doing to the model. And we're really wanting to find out what hours boats are actually using opposed to what the model says that they are using. And so the LAB decided to not allow anybody else in the model until they completed a study on the lake use model hours to see what we've got out there before we start moving hours around. They actually tabled that discussion until they get more information on the hours of what we're doing to the model by moving hours from other categories or what boats are actually using. So their vote, I believe it was before the Marine, it was already brought before the Marine Commission also, I believe. I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, our December minutes mentioned that.
Okay.
And it was mentioned that the study needed to be done.
Right.
Now, I thought it was at that meeting, but apparently not. I think it was at the subsequent LAB meeting that somebody told Mr. Brenneman that it'd be 90 days, or it'd be done within the next 90 days.
Right.
And that 90 days has got to be very close to ending, if not already.
Right.
So when do we anticipate the study being completed, and are we going to be able to give the citizen the answer that was promised within the 90 days?
Right, and the answer to that is going to be no. I ended up bringing back to the LAB and asked them to create a subcommittee to study this boat model and to study the hours of use, because I don't have enough time myself to do this project. So we've created a subcommittee on the LAB to do this study. And it's not going to be within the 90 days. I don't even know that it'll be done this season for them to actually get the correct data that they need.
What is a fair response to the citizen?
Well, who made the promise to him that it would be done in 90 days?
I don't recall who, but I remember that being talked about, that it'd be done in 90 days.
You mean during the meeting? You mean during the LAB
They're
meeting?
either here or at the subsequent LAB.
Well, I don't remember, but I could.
Again, I don't recall, but I know,
remember,
I heard that.
Right.
And you know that was said.
I remember me saying that I would try to get this done within 90 days, and then the very next LAB meeting, I brought it before the LAB board and created a subcommittee to do this.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, the 90 days cannot be met. There's no way that I could do the work on my own.
So in a sense, where we are today then is the LAB took an action to not to deny Mr. Brenneman his permit request, but simply to table it. His anticipation was that he would get some answer based on what you had told him at that meeting in 90 days. However, subsequent to that, you said you weren't going to be able to do it in 90 days, and the subcommittee was formed. And so now I believe Mr. Brenneman, and he can speak for himself, is now asking the Marine Commission, he's appealing the decision to table it and asking that it be approved. Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there's 2 more people that are on a list that are wanting into the model.
how many, what's the total number of people that did not meet the deadline that want permits now?
There's 3.
3.
3 total?
Yeah.
3 boats?
No, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're wanting 2 boats, Dan? Dan's wanting 2 boats, and I think the other 2 people are wanting 1 boat.
Are they vacation rental
Yes.
people? You've not heard from any more that?
No, not unless somebody's called today or something, but we've got, Linda's got 2 of them written down on her wall in there, and, 3 of them, counting Dan, be a total of 4 more boats.
Let me ask you this. In the pecking order of those that were late, where were Mr. Brenneman's applications? The first or the last or the middle?
I don't
Of the
know.
4 boat requests that were
I
late?
believe Dan's was the first one.
Okay.
I believe, but I'm not 100% on that.
Okay.
But you
Well,
don't
I don't think
think,
there were any other than his the last time, so these subsequent ones must have come along afterwards.
but you don't think even a response will be, or the study will be done this year?
I really don't, to tell you the truth. I think we need to really study the hours. Some of the people on the subcommittee have friends and they know people that can put hour meters on their boats and actually watch what their boats are being rented as. And I think we kind of need to see them in a summer season to get the correct data on what their boats are using. Some of the commercial, like Lake Lure Tours, Lake Lure Adventure Company, some of them can give you data now, but we're more talking about the vacation rental homes to help give us the data of how many hours their boats are actually being used during a season.
How many, do you know approximately, or the number, how many of these livery boat commercial permits have we issued? How many so far in our model, like for the year? Is it 30 or 20? 40?
There's like 60 commercial boats that are permitted. I don't have them broken down into livery and to I do on my other sheet, and I can go grab that
I'm just
sheet.
trying to get, I'm trying to get a feel of, if we were to increase it, are we increasing it 10% or 40% or 2%? You know, I'm just trying to get a order of magnitude here.
Right, I can run up front and get a.
But there's a total of
sheet.
60. I mean, if we want to look at it in terms of gross
Right.
numbers and not break out the deliveries. Yeah. Do you know, Dan, what the number is?
You got the sheet with you? Oh, yeah. Livery rental greater than 10 horsepower, we have 39 of them registered on the lake.
Okay, so 10%.
Yeah.
If these 4 boats were to be, it's a 10% variance.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you recall, just offhand, the past years, what the basic number was for the last couple of years perhaps?
They're usually close. They're usually within the mid to upper 30s. Because with the model, I mean, we don't have very little turnover each year on the livery boats. So that number usually stays fairly close within the 30s.
Pretty much about the same owners? I mean,
Yes,
renewing?
yeah.
Dan has been a owner before, with a permit before, or this
Yes.
is not the first year?
No, Dan came into the model, last year's
Last year
model,
was his first.
as a commercial rental.
Okay. Any other questions for Dean? I guess we'll have, Dan, if you want to come up and provide your position on this, before we get into making decisions, we'd like to hear from you.
Well, thank you. I come up to you not as a position of strength. I have no strength. I'm here as I went to the LAB in December. I asked for mercy. If my wife were here, she'd tell you I have to ask for mercy all the time. I don't agree with that, but she would. But it was an oversight. I missed it. Last year was the first year that I'd ever done this. Candidly, I went into the business because we had been receiving a lot of demands at our Lake Lure Landing store, and the store was losing money, and I thought this would be a way to counteract some of those losses. So I went out and purchased 2 pontoon boats and a fishing boat. The fishing boat under 10 horsepower didn't rent real well, so I'm selling that boat. But the 2 pontoon rentals, 67% of the rentals that I had last year were weekly rentals. So I thought, because our LAB voted last fall that for the payments for those commercial permits to be paid in May, and I voted against it. I wanted it, they wanted to move it up to April, and I was the only one on the board that voted against it. Basically, it was a self-serving reason for cash flow to build those monies up for deposits for the next year to pay permits. I was thinking in my head, because I'd never done this before, that's when you had to reserve the permit and when you had to pay for it. So when December came along and we had that, and we received a report from Dean, which was very detailed and very thorough, my name wasn't on there, and I about had a heart attack. So it was a complete oversight, and it was my fault. So thusly, I recused myself from the LAB, went to them and asked for mercy and grace, and they recommended this 90-day study, and I was told that it would be done in 90 days. And that's why they tabled it.
Who told you that, Dan?
It was voted on, and it's in our minutes in January.
It was voted on that the study would be done in 90 days?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that vote.
No, it was in the minutes that they.
Can we get the
they
minutes?
tabled.
Can you get the minutes from that meeting, Dean?
So I have nothing else to say other than I'm just asking
Well, I
for
want you to
mercy. It was my
get
fault.
yeah.
It was just an honest mistake.
Okay, well, thanks. Anything, while he's looking that up in the minutes, is there anything further to say from the LAB standpoint? Is this a policy issue? I mean, is it a, you approve one, you gotta approve them all, or, you know, is there some precedent here issue, or anything like that we should know about before we vote?
That depends on you guys. I mean, my first thought is if you approve Dan for his permits, probably need to approve them all. I mean, as bad situation as it is. For Dan, it kind of hurts the whole time period of when you're supposed to have the paperwork in. And that's it. I think the study, we need all summer to get a good study done, so that we can actually separate them. And the idea of the study is that I think everybody agrees on our board that there's a different, like, we first created the model, there really wasn't any vacation rentals on the lake. And so it was just deliveries over 10, and I think we all agree now that there's definitely a separation. There's some boats that get a lot more hours, which would be the hourly rentals, the Rum and Balls and Lake Lore Tours and the Lake Lore Adventure Companies, and then you've got a lot of them that are at vacation rental homes that probably get a lot less.
Yeah.
But to be studied, we don't even know. We couldn't even tell you how many there are that are being rented hourly. We don't know how many that are being rented as vacation, because we've never separated them up.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, 90 days was mentioned in the discussion, but in the recommendation made by Mr. Ashman in the minutes, the 90-day period per se in bold did not get put in there. The 90 days was discussed and agreed upon by the LAB.
Well, and from the March 4th minutes, where Mr. Brenneman went to the LAB to ask to be put on the agenda, says, Mr. Ashman reminded Mr. Brenneman that the approval of those permits were tabled for 90 days and not denied.
That's a different thing.
It's a different section. That doesn't have anything to do with this, but that's going back to the barge.
You're right. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Hear what Steve said? It's actually
I'm sorry, no, we were looking at this document here. Sorry, Steve.
Sorry. The March 4th minutes, where Mr. Brenneman asked to be added to the agenda for the Marine Commission to appeal it, Mr. Ashman reminded Mr. Brenneman that the approval of those permits were tabled for 90 days and not denied. So apparently in Mr. Ashman's even recollection, there was the discussion about the 90 days. It may not be in the minutes, but it was said.
In the January minutes, it says a recommendation was made by Mr. Ashman to table this request until further review of the lake model could be looked at.
Okay. All right, so there's the background. So yes, now the decision. So what say you? What is the pleasure of the commission?
I tend to agree with Mr. Helms. If we did approve these, then we probably need to approve all 4 of those boat requests that are outstanding. There's 3 applications for 4 boats.
So let me ask another question.
In order to be fair about it across the board, if we did approve it.
So let me ask another question. So let's assume, let's consider the situation of we have someone that comes in next week that has gotten a vacation rental permit for their home and they want to add a boat. Then what do we do? Is that an automatic approval?
What's your thought?
I don't know. Well, my thought is we need a separate classification for vacation rental boats is my real thought, but, and I think those should be tied directly to the vacation rental house.
I simply felt like, I know that the 90 days was mentioned and I remember hearing it. I don't remember who's, Dean says that he said that, and our minutes from December don't reflect that. The motion apparently was made by Mr. Ashman because he recalled it when he just said what he said on March 4th. I just felt like the citizen was owed an answer within the time period that was discussed, whether it's in the record or not. I know it was discussed. Dean knows it's discussed.
Were you at that meeting?
No. I was talking about, I heard that here, I'm sure. And Dean said that just a while ago. He said probably within 90 days. I remember hearing 90 days. So.
Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
But I just felt like the citizen was owed an answer within that 90 days.
Okay.
And it looks like it's going to be.
Yes, in the January Lake Advisory Board meeting, I think Chairman Mr. Helms and Dean would have to admit that we did discuss the 90-day period, because it was even asked how long it would take to do such a study, and Dean said it would be approximately 90 days because of his schedule. That did not get in the minutes, but it was discussed thoroughly in our meeting, and 90 days came up frequently.
Okay, all right. So having said that,
It's a toughie. I mean, if we make a commitment on any board, then we should meet the commitment. We need to take care of our obligations. That's my hang up right now, and I respect the Lake Advisory Board and their decisions and the thought process behind it. But unfortunately, we've got a case of both sides are correct. They were told 90 days that they'd have this answer and the study done.
Do we have recordings of those minutes, those meetings?
It should be. But,
I just don't remember a commitment to 90 days. And I could be wrong. You know, how about Chairman?
I remember 90 days being mentioned, but I also remember a lot of the words that have been said today. Probably, try, maybe. I don't remember 90 days being in the actual,
well,
in what we voted on.
I would say this about the 90 days. If there was a recommendation, I'm sure we'd follow it. There isn't. And there isn't going to be, it sounds like, for the season. So that's the situation that we have. Whether it was said or it wasn't said or whatever, we don't have a decision. And so we're going to have to make up our minds about what to do based on the situation we have at hand here.
Were you done?
Yeah, we have one comment, though, maybe on this from the chairman there.
I know there wasn't a vote on this. It's a tough situation because, you know, we're talking about a fellow citizen in Dan. We know the situation he's in. But I will say that I think everybody in our, you know, on our board thinks that the model is full, that the model is telling us the truth, and that we've got a lot of commercial votes out there. And that's why we wanted to study, just to see the difference of it. And I can only speak for myself and what I think, because we didn't vote on anything, but I'm not sure that our, I don't know how many people would vote to just let some more people into the model.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you get the hours? Where do you take them from? Do you take them? Do you just extend this one? And that's why it's a complicated decision, or can be.
Well, I think, you know, as the Lake Advisory Liaison, the discussion about 90 days happened. I don't question it whatsoever, but in reality, there's no way to come to a decision about that in 90 days until you have accurate data, which can only be gathered through this coming season. So I don't think that I couldn't make this decision today based on the fact that, you know, we expected to have that done in 90 days, because there's no way it could have been done and been done accurately and fairly to the citizens and everything in 90 days that way.
To be fair, in the meeting in January, when I was asked that time, I was asked how long did I think this would take?
Right.
And I averaged out about 90 days. But then in the next meeting, I come back to the LAB and said, I'm not going to be able to meet that 90 days. So it's not going to happen. That's when I requested that the LAB come up with a subcommittee. So, you know, I'm telling you there that the 90 days is not realistic. It's not going to happen. And that's why I summoned the LAB to create the subcommittee, so that I can have some help to study this model and get it done.
When the 90 days came up, originally, I guess there wasn't the factor of collecting data over this coming season wasn't part of the mix at that point, was it?
No, it was.
So that's something that came along later, and obviously, if you're gonna collect data over the whole season, you can't, the 90 days doesn't work.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in the past, if I'm maybe recalling correctly, one of the ways that we, the Lake Advisory Board and the town handled these kinds of variances from when you're exceeding a particular category in the model was, didn't we take hours from some other category that wasn't being used? Sort of the non-motorized comes to mind, that's the one that never, and you make it, whatever those hours are, equivalent to whatever the hours would be of the additional permit that we were considering in variance, and say, okay, so the overall model wasn't full, we took them out of a category that still had enough hours to compensate for the one we were adding. So the concept being that then the lake overall hadn't reached its capacity in all categories. Is that right? Have we attempted to do that in this case? And if not, for what reason? Is there not available hours in other categories, or is that just something wasn't requested, or we didn't do, or what's the deal on that?
The reason being behind it is we can move the hours from one category to another, but moving a less than 10 horsepower slot to an above 10 horsepower slot requires 2-point-something boats to make that transition.
Mm-hmm.
But as we do that, and these people are getting loaded into the model, we're taking away from the chance of that category next year.
No.
Like Lake Lure Tours, excuse me, Lake Lure Tours asked for 2 motorized less than 10 horsepower this year. If we keep giving all these hours away from the less than 10 horsepower category, then when we go into next season, somebody buys one or tries to go into that category, there's not gonna be any hours there because we give them all over to the above 10 horsepower.
So we're kind of upsetting the balance that we tried to create when we set the original
Exactly.
allocations in the model, right? To give different voting categories their opportunity to be on the lake in that category. That's what we're saying. So it's something. Okay. All right.
Are you done?
Yes.
All right. Another question. The new deadline for payment is what, April now?
Yes.
How many folks do you know of right now that have not paid?
I don't know that. That's usually something that's tracked in admin up here.
Okay. So there is still hope that if somebody comes along and doesn't pay, they're going to be dropped out of the model according to the rule. Correct. And he being the first on the list would be able to be fit into the model if it's the same type of boat. So there is still some hope there. Okay. Now, and the what if the person that drops out only had 1 boat and his application's for 2, he only gets 1 of the 2?
Correct.
Okay. There's that possibility.
Is that date April 1st?
I think it was April 15th. I think, if I remember correctly, Bob wanted it on tax day.
What?
Yep,
April 15th.
April 15th.
That's a cruel joke.
It's a cool joke, you might as well pay everything at one time.
Yeah. All right, Dan, you have something to add?
Yes. I may be shooting myself in the foot, but those who know me, I'm a person of rules. I officiated major college basketball. I love rules. I don't want a decision to be made for Dan Brenneman. I want a decision to be made for the residents of Lake Lure and what's best for our lake. So in making this decision, please do not make it for Dan Brenneman. I despise politics. I want it made on the behalf of the residents of Lake Lure and what's best for our lake.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Okay.
Well, if we make this decision, we're making it for the three citizens that are in the situation.
Right.
I mean, if we I mean, we can't say that we're opening up the commercial boat thing for anybody that comes up that needs one in the next, I mean.
I agree. I think there's also the implication that if we believe in the integrity of the model that we created and in the importance of maintaining a healthy level of boat traffic on the lake that promotes a safe situation and allows people who are permitted to use the boats to do that in a good recreational setting, then if we're upholding the citizens, we may do the opposite in terms of the way we approach variances to the thing, right? I mean, I think a decision could hinge on that.
This isn't exactly on point, but it relates to it. I think it would be a good idea to require an hour meter on every commercial boat. I know I put a new motor on a couple years ago and looked at I sent you the email and the number of hours that was put on my boat, my vacation rental was minuscule compared to what I thought it would have been. In fact, I had Brad there with me. I questioned, I said, Brad, are you sure this? He said, oh yeah. He said, that's connected to, he said, anytime the switch is on, that hour meter's running. And I think if we had those, if we required all commercial boats to have those, it's not an expensive thing, you can put it on there, that we get some real good hard data for going forward. It's not gonna help us in our decision today, but that would be some very valuable data to have.
If I could address that, I agree with that idea, and I would like to make a suggestion that we task the LAB to discuss that and also come up with a timeline for implementing it, and how long would you give them to get it accomplished before they would not be allowed to register their commercial boat?
I'd say, so I would word it.
I'd recommend that discussion for the LAB.
To ask the LAB, can they come up with a reason why we should not? But failing that we should, I think I'd like to see.
Well, I'd like to make one more comment, and you've heard me make it before, but I think that a commercial rental boat that is designed directly for vacation and rental houses should be a separate category. I think it should be a separate category, and I think that it should be a category where that boat, because what you just said about it's not near what you think it is as far as use goes. I had one for years that I operated in a vacation rental. But I think that should be a separate category, and I think that it should be a rule that that boat be titled to the person that owns the vacation rental house. And I think that that should be, then we can determine, as we do this study this year, how many of those we can have. I mean, it's an opportunity for the town to make money on selling the permits. I'm not looking to limit the number of permits, but I think that it's another way. We're talking about redoing the marina and adding 60 more boat slips or whatever so we can make money. This would be a way of making money, and I think we would find after this, we have the study, that it would be a lot less of a issue and impact than we think it would be. I do think that we have to be careful as a town that we are in a situation now. Mr. Brennan is a citizen, and he wants this to be for the citizens. We have people who are renting commercial boat slips that have websites on the computer, on the World Wide Web, and they're renting boats to people that are vacation rentals or day people. They'll come and rent it to them for 4 hours, and they're making money on our lake, and that's not the way it's supposed to be, in my opinion. And so, I don't know how we fix that, but I think it needs to be fixed. It gripes me a lot to sit on my dock and watch people right straight across from me that have boat slips rented, that are not citizens of Lake Lure, that meet people and put them out on those boats and make money. And that's, we have two more people that are besides Dan. Are they both homeowners?
One of them is that I know of.
We turned one down last year for somebody that was not a citizen, that was not a property owner.
So I make the motion that the LAB take up a discussion on the installation of hour meters on commercial boats and the feasibility of that, as well as the feasibility of a separate permit category for vacation rentals.
All right, well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
All right, Commissioner Cameron seconds. Any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, let's get back to the original question here. How do we?
Well, as far as decision for all the citizens, then the same that I pretty much stick to on everything is I don't believe in the exceptions for the individual. If the rule isn't satisfactory, then we change the rule. And if that's the approach that needs to be done through the study, then we do that. And I'm sorry, Mr. Brenneman, but I would have to, I'm going to make a motion that the approval of your permits without the study be denied.
So, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Much as I hate it, I'll have to second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on this? If not, I'll call the question, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. And we still have the question on this of somebody doesn't renew, doesn't pay by the...
Well, he still has that code.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's, what is it, first in, first out, or whatever that is?
Yeah, we keep it on a list.
On a list, okay.
And that rule's already there, so
All
the
right.
motion that was just made and the vote doesn't affect that.
It fits into that, yeah. Okay, well, that then brings us on the agenda to the final item under new business. It takes us to item C, we're not to the final. This is a recommendation from the Lake Lure Advisory Board to allow complimentary boat permits for Town of Lake Lure retirees. Dean, you want to say what that is?
I received a phone call from the ex-police chief, Mike Bussell. Some of you, probably all of you remember him. Mike Bussell served as police chief of Lake Lure. He retired from here, and he spent 12 years as a reserve officer till his health has gotten him to where he can't do the functions of an officer anymore. But he asked me, did the town give retired employees a free boat permit? And I told him that we didn't, and he asked me to bring it to the Lake Advisory Board. I brought it to the Lake Advisory Board. Lake Advisory Board wanted a stipulation on there. They liked the idea, but they wanted a stipulation on there that that you retired from the town with 10+ years of service. And that's what they've sent to you guys as a recommendation. But I got to thinking after the fact that Mr. Bussell served 8 years as a chief, and he's the one that kind of got this started. But he did spend 12 years also as a reserve officer with the town prior to getting to where he couldn't function anymore as an officer. So,
Dean, do we know how many other people would fall into this category?
no, I really don't. There's not that many people that have retired from here.
There's not a lot that
And the
have 10
recent-
years.
Right, there's not a lot that's had 10 years. So I really don't know the answer to that, John.
I think that's something would probably be good to know what we're getting ourselves into.
Well, we did look up, during the meeting, we looked up how many complimentary boat permits we give away per year. That would be to the volunteer firemen, the reserve police officers, the town staff and stuff. And looking back I think we looked back what was it, 15 years or so, and the average of that was in the mid-20s to low 30s is what we give away. Each year. I don't know, I'd have to go through HR to find out how many people's actually retired with that many years. And that, I also, it was brought up to us from, I guess from Dave, had brought up
The Bailey Act.
Yeah, the Bailey Act. And I did vet that through our town attorney. And so you got that? Okay, so you've seen what the town attorney said. And I would also, I agree with what the town attorney said, is that we would tie in some more stipulations to this, that it couldn't be passed on. It has to be that one person. The vote has to be registered in their name, not somebody else's name. I mean, there's some stipulations I still think need to be added to that.
Well, it sounds like we need more work
Yeah.
before we have enough information to make a decision.
Is there a way we could fix it to where we wouldn't have to wait till the next Marine Commission meeting to decide this, where we don't go 3 months or
We'll do it at the next council meeting.
as part of council, or we have to have a separate Marine Commission?
Well, it's the lake use regulations, which is the Marine Commission document, so,
That's the reason I was asking.
yeah.
Or we could schedule
And
a short,
I don't see any hurt in waiting until the next Marine Commission to implement it. Because that give them the time to get the numbers together on potentials and look at different scenarios. One bit of criteria I would like to see, it's clearly specified, is yes, they retire from the town of Lake Lure, and they have at least 10 years of service to the town of Lake Lure. Not 10 years of service and then they leave, go somewhere else and retire,
Right.
and then come back and want a free boat permit. So I would like to see that clarified. The other thing is with regard to the complimentary boat permits, and to throwing, I guess, a little off subject, is something I've been looking at for a while and thinking about is there's a potential loophole, and I think the intent of that regulation and the intent of the past lake advisory boards and so on through the time was that there's a potential for 2 members of the same family to get permits, and I don't think that was the intent. I think it was to be for one family, and I think we need to close that loophole and just put that caveat in the regulation, that only a limit of 1 per family.
Right.
Or household. So that's just my thought on that, so.
Okay.
I agree, let's just table it and address it next Marine Commission.
Okay.
That's what I think, yeah, I agree with that. Do we need to vote on that? No?
No.
Just table it? Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dean.
Yes, sir.
And that then brings us to our final item on the new business which we've added, and this has to do with the dredging of Firefly Cove. And so there's a proposal here from Firefly Cove.
Yes, sir.
And there's a recommendation by staff. So would you just go quickly over that, Dean, since you're...
I was gonna
No
make a
need to sit
motion that
down.
we support it. Oh.
This has been brought up before to you guys. All of you, I'm preaching to the choir when I say that the storms last year devastated Firefly Cove with the 2-feeder streams coming in. I've produced maps, sonar maps from that area, that most of that cove is unnavigable. One of the things we've done when we help dredge around the lake is we look for partnerships. We look for homeowners or property owners to give money to help with the project so that the project goes further. Firefly Cove Homeowners Association has met that need. They've offered up $70,000 if we would match $70,000. So the total would be $140,000 worth of dredging in the Firefly Cove area. I believe this is needed, and I believe it's a good project. The dredge right now is currently sitting just outside of Firefly Cove, and he's within, excuse me, he's within a few weeks of finishing up what the town has contracted him to do for this year, and it would be an easy fit for him to finish up there and move straight into that cove and get that area cleaned out prior to our boating season opening up.
Yeah. I'd like to start off with this.
Well, wait a minute, see, I don't mean to jump in front of you, but this, I not only live in Firefly Cove, but this affects me directly right in front of my house. I think I'm gonna ask to be recused.
I don't think you necessarily need to do so.
Well, it's up to y'all to decide, but I'm making the request.
Well, bottom line, I mean, do you stand to gain personally or I mean, financially from this, or benefit financially?
Well, I stand to be able to use my pontoon.
Right, but I mean, you know,
And not have to buy props every week.
yeah. I personally don't think you need to, and I don't think Commissioner Cameron needs to.
Well, he's not, the difference between me and Cameron is I'm on the waterfront, and the water off my dock is about a foot deep. So, that's.
But that's not a monetary gain.
If you don't want to recuse me, that's fine. But I'm asking.
I make a motion that there's no need to recuse.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Sorry, John, you're not.
I like this, and I thank Firefly Cove for coming up with this plan and presentation. I think it's a great idea. And we already voted a couple, 3 months back if we had money in Silt Reserve to use it. And we have the money there to match the 70,000. The paper didn't say 70,000 each, so I had a question earlier about whether it's each or up to a maximum of 70, but now you're talking 70 each for a maximum of 140.
Yes, sir.
I also like between the town manager and you in negotiating this contract to think about method of payment, whether the town does the contract and pays the whole bill and then sends a bill to Firefly Cove for their half, or do we just pay half and they pay half? So I'd like for you all to think about that in the process. But I make a motion that we support this application and do the appropriate budget amendment necessary to fund it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Kilby. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Bob? Huh? It's that time.
And you can abstain.
Oh. Make the motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a-
Hold up.
Oh, wait, we're not, I thought we were done.
Well, one thing I want to echo off of Stevens, I'm not a finance director or anything.
Right.
But there's, coming to you tonight, it's going to be a budget amendment to move money from the silt reserves to the dredging funds to be able to do the Firefly Cove property. With Stephen asking that if the town pays the whole amount and bills them, or if we split the amount, if I'm not mistaken, tonight coming to you is to move $70,000, not $140,000. I don't know how that plays in, but something you might want to think about.
I would support that budget amendment to move the amount necessary based on the decision of how it's being paid and who's paying.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So we had a motion, we have a second. No discussion. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Sorry, y'all, business council meeting, but